Okay, my name is Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome everyone to week number 34 of the Big Book Comes Alive, this current cycle. Um, I was in preparation for Thursday night's meeting with Steve. He asked me to kind of put together some background information. And I decided to go back into my archives on the computer to find when was the first meeting that the Big Book Comes Alive, that what became the Big Book Comes Alive started, because we didn't always use that title. I believe that title, that name, Big Book Comes Alive, is part of the intellectual property of Joe and Charlie, and I wouldn't ever disrespect them by using it without permission. So when I finally did meet up with the survivor, Phyllis McCoy, I asked her permission. She granted it. In fact, she may even be here today. She does pay us a visit from time to time. She gave me permission to use that name. But the point is, when I went back, we started these meetings on Sunday nights at 5 o'clock 18 years ago. 18 years we've been doing these meetings like this. It's just, we're in our 18th year, actually. So it's actually 17 years. But that is, we have grown from an average attendance of maybe 3 or 4. We got 126 people here today. What a thing. So thank you. Thank you all for making this possible. What a great thing we have here. Okay, we are in How It Works. We have collectively taken the first 2 steps, and we're looking at the third step. We're approaching that third step. Um, Going back by way of review, anytime people ask me, how do you work the first two steps? There just doesn't seem to be any directions in the book for that. Well, I beg to differ. There are directions. On page 60, we're told that if we read the doctor's opinion and the first 4 chapters, the description to the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, personal stories before and after, make clear 3 pertinent ideas. And that is step 1 and step 2. So if we have read that material, we have come to some conclusions of the mind, and that's all step 1 and 2 are conclusions of the mind. They're not writing steps, they're not work steps, they are, in a sense, intellectual steps, but it's more than that. It has to come from the heart. And that's how we work the first 2 steps, if you want to use that word, is by reading and absorbing those chapters. And in the original writing, if you remember, Bill said after he laid those things out, that if you haven't grasped those facts, perhaps you should start over, read the book again, or else just throw the book away. Because going on from this point, unless we grasp those first 2 steps, there's no point in going on. The first step recognizes that we are powerless, that we cannot fix ourselves, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. The first part of the first step, admit we were alcoholics. But then there's that dash, and then there's the second part of the first step, which it says we cannot manage sobriety either. And in B, we're told that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, which is step 2. And part 3 of the ABCs is that God could and would if he were sought. So we can't, he or she can, so I think we'll let him. I used to think it was I can't, we can, so I think I'll let him. I'm sorry, what it actually is I can't, she can, I think I will go after him. I'll pursue that power because the C says that could and would if he were sought. So there's action involved. There's action involved. And if we've absorbed those 3 facts, the book tells us if we're convinced of those things, then we're at step 3. We haven't taken it. We're on the doorstep. We're on that threshold of step 3. And then Bill begins to talk about why we have to do the work that we're about to do. That the reasons for our downfall were not the chemicals we were consuming, was not our family, being raised, was not the government, was not anybody's fault. Our problems are basically of our own making. And Bill starts out with a little formula. He says the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life, and if you've got the book out, and I hope you do, we're on page 60. I know we're up on page 62, but I want to go over a few things here. On page 60, Bill says the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life, and I don't know if I pointed this out last week, but perhaps you should circle that word any life. That means my life as a friend, as a parent, as a spouse, as a potential employer or employee, as a neighbor, as a brother, whatever life I'm leading, whatever character I'm playing at that point, whatever, as our friend Terry likes to say, whatever minion I'm portraying at that point, that any of those lives can hardly be a success because it's run on self-will. And what happens when I run on self-will? When I make decisions based on self, because that's what I always did. What's in it for me? What do I get out of it? Why should I do it? The AA opera, me. Well, when I make decisions based on self, and we're going to begin to look at what those manifestations of self are, that's the whole point of what we're about to start doing, is that when I make decisions based on those manifestations of self, something happens. I am in conflict spiritually, mentally, physically. Because you see, when I try and force my will on you or any other given situation, there's going to be resistance. The problem with self-will is everyone's got it. And you're not going to allow me to force my will on you because you've got your own ideas about the way things should be done. You've got your own playbook. You don't necessarily want to go by Howard Eber's playbook. You've got your own playbook. So what happens? We collide. We run into each other. And when we collide, what happens? Well, what happens when I step on your toes? You push back. And when you push back and when you tell me, get off my foot, what do? I react. I retaliate. I get angry. I get fearful. I act in a harmful manner. In other words, I get resentful. And when I'm resentful, I will drink and I will drug. So if the problem, the actions of my life are lousy, like the drinking and the drugging, and I want to change the actions, I have to first identify the thought that sets in motion that chain of events that leads to that action. That thought of self that puts me in conflict with you, that causes you to retaliate and push back, that causes me to get angry or fearful or act in a harmful manner, to get resentful and wind up drinking and drugging. So I have to identify what those forms of self are so I can act differently. In order for me to change my actions, I have to change my thinking. I can't reach over and pick up this pen without my brain communicating in thought to my shoulder, to my arm, to my hand, to my fingers, to commit to the action of picking up the pen. All action is born in thought. I know a lot of folks say that I could act my way into good thinking. But think about that for a second. You had an idea. The idea is I'm going to act my way into good thinking. So it starts with a thought. It always starts with a thought. We cannot act our way into good thinking because everything begins with a thought. We think our way into good actions. And where we are as we've gone through these pages is Bill has compared us to the actor who wants to control everything on the stage, not just the other actors. We want to control the inanimate things, the lights, the scenery. We want everything to suit the way we want it to be. And what happens? If our arrangements would only stay put, everything would be fine. But they don't stay put. So what do? We begin to think that life isn't treating us right. And what do? We exert ourselves more. What does a good alcoholic do when he doesn't get his way? Does he give up? Not any good alcoholic. We double down. We double down. And if I have to be mean or if I have to be kind and gentle, whatever it is. If I have to be angry or indignant or self-pitying, whatever it is, I'll do it to get my way. And if I still don't get my way, what happens then? I've doubled down and I didn't get my way. What do I do now? I eat humble pie. I acknowledge that I may be somewhat at fault, but I'm not to blame, that other people are to blame. And we took a look last week at the difference between those two words, that word fault and the word blame. That admitting that I may be at fault means I'm acknowledging a slight offense. That's what fault is. It's defined as a slight offense or a slight crime, if you will. A blame is the responsibility for a wrong. That's what the blame is. So I may say I'm at fault, that I've somehow committed some slight offense, but I'm not responsible for the wrong. And I still don't get my way. I still don't get my way. And I convince myself that of the delusion, and this is the sober delusion. We have a sober delusion and we have a drunken delusion. On page 30, we have the drunken delusion, which is that we could drink like other people, and that delusion has to be smashed. And here we have a sober delusion, which is that I can wrest satisfaction out of this world if I only manage well. Rest means to take by force. That if I exert myself up enough, if I force myself enough, I can get you to do just about anything. And at the end of the paragraph on page 61, Bill says something very interesting. He says, is he not, even in his best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? That's on page 61. It is the first full paragraph. It's about, I don't know, 10, 12 lines up from the bottom of the page. And I'm going to suggest you highlight it if you haven't, because it's really important. Is he not, in his own best moments, meaning when my intentions are right, even when my intentions are right, and that's the way I always judged myself, was by my intentions. I always meant right. I always meant right. My intentions are right. But even in those moments, do I not produce confusion rather than harmony? And when at this stage in recovery, when I'm faced with indecision or doubt, and I'm not sure what does what would God want me to do in a case like this? What is God's will for me in this particular situation? I suggest you ask yourself that question. Is what I'm going to do likely to produce confusion or harmony? See, I believe God wants me to produce harmony. I don't think he wants me to walk around producing confusion everywhere I go. I spent most of my life doing that, and I don't have to do that anymore. So I ask myself, is what I'm about to do going to produce harmony or confusion? And that's a way for me, unlike what a lot of people say, which is just do the next right thing. I have no idea what the next right thing is. You go into a lot of meetings and they have that sign up on the wall. It says think, think, think. Well, the last thing in the world I want to do when I'm undecided and I'm doubtful is to invite the predator into the decision-making process. That's what got me into this situation. Thinking is the worst thing I could possibly do. So where we are today, we finally catch up with today. I didn't forget. We're on page 62. I'm going to go back one paragraph. I'm going to start with the first full paragraph that begins with selfish self-centeredness. And I mentioned last week that Bill starts at the previous page and he ends on the next page, at the top of the page, I believe, with using the word self 22 times over and over and over again. I get the point. But he also comes right out and tells us in a few situations, like he's about to now, that selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And if we're counting, I don't want to go all the way back to number 1 or number 2, but selfishness is number 12, self-centeredness is number 13. That is the root of our troubles. Notice it doesn't say was. Is the root of our troubles. And the root, oh, I forgot it again. I forgot it last week. I'm going to remember to bring that illustration one of these weeks. That just shows how massive the root system can be under trees, because that's what gives the plant life. What feeds the tree, what feeds the plant is the root system. So if we can look at our ism, our alcoholism, our addiction as the tree, then the roots that feed our ism are those manifestations of self. Self feeds my disease. Self keeps it going. So selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. And please highlight this next sentence: driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, that's number 14, self-seeking, 15, self-pity, 16. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Here's that formula again. We started it on the previous page, that when we run on self-will, we collide. When we collide with those around us, what happens? We step on their toes and they retaliate. So now we're up to the retaliation segment of that equation. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, meaning without reason. But, and please highlight the rest of this paragraph, we invariably, and invariably just means without fail, we find at some time in the past, and please underline this, we have made decisions based on self, which later put us in a position to be hurt. We made decisions based on self that later put us in a position to be hurt. And I gave you the example last week. Oops, I'm getting some static here, so let me just mute everybody again. I gave the example last week of the guy who was operating an after-hours pharmaceutical exchange business. And at 2 a.m, he was at an intersection and somebody blew through a stoplight and T-boned him at 2 a.m. And it turns out the guy who hit him was an illegal alien, obviously didn't have a driver's license, didn't have insurance, and his car was totaled. So the guy who got hit made it his life's mission to make that guy as miserable and and make him pay in every possible way he can. And when he told this incident to his sponsor said, "Wait a minute, what were you doing at 2 a.m. at that intersection? You were dealing drugs. You made a decision based on self that put you at that intersection at 2 a.m. If you weren't, you'd be home sleeping, or you'd be watching TV or whatever you would be doing, but you wouldn't be at that intersection at 2 a.m. So you placed yourself in a position to be hurt. And if we look at these things, I'm sure we could always find something we did, something we said that put us in a position to be hurt. Continuing, so our troubles, we think, and please highlight this first sentence, our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. That is basically the spiritual axiom of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's only one spiritual axiom. It's in the 12 and 12 on page 90, and you don't always necessarily have to go chasing the book down now, because I'll read it to you. But on page 90, it says the following: it is a spiritual axiom that every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. And an axiom, incidentally, is a statement that's accepted as true, that's universally accepted as true. It's an established, self-evident truth. a principle, a basic truth or rule. That's what an axiom is. And so our spiritual axiom is every time we're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with us. And to put it another way, our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. There's number 18 of self. And the alcoholic, please underline this, the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. Self-will run riot. We make decisions based on those 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-pity, all of these manifestations of self. And we're going to start to identify what those things look like. Right now, all we know is that they are manifestations of self. We don't have any names for them yet. That's what we do our inventory for, is to come up with those so we can identify the manifestation of self that appears as being frightened or inconsiderate or irresponsible or dishonest or selfish, self-seeking, judgmental. Those are the manifestations of self, but we haven't identified them yet. All we've done now is we've been told that they drive us around. Like the limousine driver who picks us up in the morning and says, I'm going to be your driver. Today I'll drive you all around. My name is Fear. And the next day, our limousine driver introduces himself. Hi, my name is Self-Seeking. I'm going to be driving you around all day today. And so on. Because that's what being driven means. We are not in control. We're in the back seat. So self-will run riot, though usually doesn't think so. Above everything, please highlight we alcoholics must, and let's circle the must in green, because as everyone knows, there's no musts in this book, but whenever we find one of those exceptions, we highlight them in green, and I think we're up to, I believe, 141. As Paige likes to say, it's a very musty book. There's a lot of musty in here. So, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness, and there's number 20, self, use of self, 20. We must, there's another must that's not in the book, or it kills us. That's a pretty strong warning. That is one of many death sentences that Bill's going to tell us about. Please highlight this next little sentence, 4 words, but in pink. Please in pink, because it's a promise. God makes that possible. We can't fix self with self. A sick mind cannot heal a sick mind. Albert Einstein said, you cannot use the same thinking process to get out of a problem that got you into the problem in the first place. Joe and Charlie do a great parallel. They say that when an addict or an alcoholic tries to get rid of self by themselves, it's like a chimpanzee who has gum stuck on his paws, and all he does is keep touching himself to try and get rid of it, and all that does is spread the gum all over the place, because you can't get rid of gum on a chimpanzee without somebody coming along and snipping it off. You need help. Well, God makes that possible in our case. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self, there's 21 uses of self, without his aid. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we couldn't live up to them even if we would have liked to. Let's go back a little bit. What do we mean? Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions. Well, to me, a moral conviction is a sense of right and wrong. I think we all have that. I like to think, at least, that I had a conscience when I was drinking and I was drugging, and I wasn't drinking and drugging. I thought I had a conscience. I really do. I tried to act in a way that would would indicate that I had a conscience, but that went right out the window when I was on the prowl for my chemicals and my drink. That all went out the window. All morals went out. That sense of right and wrong was gone. And philosophical convictions in this case, to me, means practical wisdom, knowledge gained through experience. And I think that fits, because Bill is saying this: many of us had moral senses of right and wrong, and we had practical wisdom. We had experience. We had knowledge from experience galore. We had tons of it. We had shitloads of it. Didn't help us one bit. Could not live up to them even if we would have liked to. And please highlight the next two sentences. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on our own power. We had to, and it's a must. We had to is another way of saying must. So I've circled that in green. We had to have God's help. But let me just back up a minute, because I like to play connect the dots in this book. I don't think it's really going off on tangents, but call it what you will. We just covered him saying many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore. Keep your place on this page, if you would. And next to that, write the following. See page 44.4 and 45.0. And now let's turn to page 44. See what the hell Howard's talking about. Page 44, paragraph 4, 2 lines up from the bottom of that page. If a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. So he's mentioning it once already there. If a code of morals and philosophical convictions were enough, we wouldn't be here today. So there's the first reference. Then if you turn to page 45, the next page, the top paragraph, our human resources, I'm sorry, third line down. We could wish to be moral. Again, wish to have a sense of right and wrong. We could wish to be philosophically comforted, to get some relief in the knowledge that we have from our experience. But it was insufficient. We couldn't will that to solve this problem. The needed power wasn't there. A sense of right and wrong, experience and knowledge isn't enough. So here we are now back on page 62 for the third reference to morals and philosophical convictions. That paragraph ends with the must. We had to have God's help. And here's a great example of, I think, of Bill's simplicity and genius. I may alienate some people when I say that, but there are some times that Bill's genius just kind of slips through, and it's amazing how spot on he could be. Now watch what he does here. He says, this is the how and why of it. Please circle how and please circle why. Now, he could go on now for 10 pages more. Bill likes to talk, so he could go on for X number of pages and talk about the how of it and talk about the why of it. He could spend the rest of the book talking about those things, but he doesn't. Watch what he does here. This is the how and the why of it. Please highlight, first of all, we had to quit playing God. Above that, write how. That's how we do it. Here's the how and the why of it. How do we do that? Stop playing God. And incidentally, should be circled in green because it's another way of saying must. But how is that not just beautifully succinct and perfect? Here's the how. Stop playing God. And the why is even better. It only takes 3 words to tell us why. And please highlight the next 3 words. It didn't work. And above that, write the why. How beautiful is that? Here's the how and the why of it. How do you do that? Stop playing God. Why? Because you're not. You're not God. Take a look in the mirror. You're not God. There's the how and the why of it. We just saved maybe 100 pages of reading in 2 little sentences. Okay, next. What do you do when you're in line at the bank and the teller says next? Step up now. That means now. That doesn't mean in 10 minutes or whenever you're ready. Now. We decided that hereafter in this drama of life, please highlight the rest of the paragraph. Starting with next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life. Please highlight the rest of the paragraph. And as we go through it, I'm going to suggest you circle a few things. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. Please circle director. He is the principal. Please circle principal. We are his agents. An agent is someone who works for a client. We are the agents. God is the client. He's the boss. He's the director. He's the principal. He's the father. Please circle father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone. The keystone. In an arch, the keystone is that little almost triangular stone in the center of the arch that keeps it from collapsing onto itself. Come back to that thought in a moment. It was the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. Andy, if you could give me 62:3, please. This should be in your emails. 62:3. I'm pretty sure we used this once, twice before. It's the spiritual arch. Did I lose Andy? Oh, there we go. Scared me, pal. Okay. We did refer to this at least twice before. When we talked about the first step, willingness being the foundation, on page 12, we were told that willingness is the foundation of this arch that we will build. Then we had the second part was believing. Step 2 was the cornerstone, that stone that keeps the whatever it is you're building, that keeps it level, that keeps it plumb. I'm not a mason, but that's what they tell me. That's what a cornerstone does. And that's step 2. And then we have this keystone up at the top, this almost triangular stone that by pressure over time solidifies the arch. By continuing to press down on it, as I understand it, it solidifies the arch. That's a technicality that's irrelevant, incidentally. It is in the design of the arch, it is that stone at the top that keeps the arch from collapsing onto itself. And the other steps are the stones on either side of it. Steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And this is the triumphant arch through which we will pass to freedom. Bill just mentioned it. He said the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. In a couple of pages up on page 75, he mentions we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. That's the spiritual arch that we're building. And Bill has been building it for now, 60 some odd pages. It is now complete. We have the arch. Now we have to walk through it. You could take that down, Andy. This next paragraph, I'm going to suggest you highlight entirely in pink. This paragraph is very often referred to as the third step promises. And I don't know, because the promises talk about not the third step, which is the next paragraph. These promises refer to the paragraph we just read. So it's the promises of the third step that come before, in a sense, that third step. And here's what I mean. Again, let's take a look for a second at the bottom of page 62. What does it tell us? It tells us that God is our director. He's the principal. He's the father. He's the boss. I came here in the secondary position thinking I was primary. Secondary position means I'm taking orders, and I came here thinking I'm giving orders. For 24 years in recovery, I had a very dysfunctional relationship with God because I was taught to start each day with the third step prayer and tell God the things you need him to do. Now, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be asking for direction. I'm not giving orders. God isn't my errand boy. I am here to take those orders. So once I have that straight, once I have the natural order of things right, and the natural order is he's the director, he's the principal, he's the father. Got it. Straight. I am number two. He's number one. I came here thinking I was number one. I'm not. Now, this paragraph says, when we sincerely took such a position, what position is that? See the previous page. The position of God being the director, God being the principal, God being the father. When I sincerely took that position, and incidentally, sincerely taking that position, that is the gateway promise to everything that follows. That's really what the third step is. It's the gateway promise of everything that follows it. It's like a legal contract. You know, on the face page of a legal contract, in most cases, it has all of the good information. If it's a contract about salary and it's about term, it's about job, it has the most important details on the face of the contract, and you sign the bottom of the contract. And then on the following pages, you have to initial at different points. And I think that's what the steps are, is we initial on each page as we go through the rest of the steps. But the face contract, the page one of our contract, is the third step, where we sign this contract and we make this decision. And it starts by recognizing who's in charge. He's the principal. He's the father. When I sincerely took that position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. Remarkable things. I am an ordinary person who keeps having remarkable things happen to him. I don't know how that is. It just is. I'm not special. I'm not any different than anyone else. But I have some remarkable things happening in my life. And it very much is because I took that position, got out of the driver's seat. I'm asking for directions, not giving them. So when I took that position, all sorts of remarkable things follow. We had a new employer. Now, for what it's worth, this paragraph I have personalized all the way through. All the we's in my book have I above it. Mark Houston said that in his book, he didn't put I, he wrote Mark. So Mark had a new employer. Mark had this, Mark had that. Whatever fits. But I think it's worthy of thought to maybe personalize this paragraph. So in my book, it says, when I sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. I had a new employer. What happens when you have a new employer? You have a new job, you have a new employer. What's one of the first things they do? They tell you your job description. Here's my job description. Being all powerful, he provided what I needed. Please circle or underline that word needed, not wants. God isn't the least bit concerned with what I want. He doesn't give a damn about what I want. He will give me what I need. And that's what this promises me. I take that position. I have a new employer. He's all powerful. He will provide what I need if, and circle that if. There's the condition. There's always a condition. If, please underline the rest of this sentence, we kept close to him and performed his work well. There's my job description. What is my job? If God is the director and the principal and the father, my description, my job is to stay close to him and perform his work well. Now, at one of the more recent workshops, when it was not important, somebody suggested that the word performed should be considered a must. So in his book, he has it circled in green. I'm not totally convinced on that yet, but I'm just passing it along. If that rings true for you, then do it. Performed his work well. It is a must. I'll grant you that. That if we want to have these things, this is what we have to do. Establish on such a footing. And again, what is that footing? He's the director. He's the principal. He's the father. Established on such a footing, again, I'm personalizing it, I became less and less interested in myself, my little plans and designs. More and more, I became interested in seeing what I could contribute to life. Please underline that word contribute. I am no longer a taker. I spent my whole life taking. What's in it for me? Why should I do it? What do I get out of it? I'm now giving. I'm not taking anymore. What I can contribute to life. As we felt new power, as I felt new power flow in, as I enjoyed peace of mind, please underline peace of mind. And above it, I've written not RID. And RID is the way I abbreviate restless, irritable, discontented. There's not enough room to write it as many times as I have it notated. So RID, whenever I see that, just means restless, irritable, discontented. It is the opposite of peace of mind. I came in here restless, irritable, and discontented. As a result of this work, I now have peace of mind. As I discovered, I could face life successfully. Please underline, as we became conscious of his presence. As I became conscious of his presence, how do I explain what that meant to me? I'm in a dark room, no furniture, nobody in this room. It's barren, it's empty. It's just me. And literally, I'm feeling around for a light switch in a sense. There's nothing in this room. But I sense another entity. I sense I'm not alone in this dark, empty room. Anyone ever have that feeling? That's what we're talking about. That's how I felt when I took this position. I wasn't alone anymore. I was in that room. There was nothing in that room but me, yet I wasn't alone. I became conscious of that presence. So as I became conscious of that presence, and that develops incidentally, as we get closer to step 5, Bill tells us that we begin to feel the nearness of our creator. So I'm not only in that dark room sensing I'm not alone, I'm sensing that entity is close. And then a little further on, we sense the flow of that spirit into us in the 10th step. And by the 11th step, we have made conscious contact with God. But it starts, actually, it doesn't even start here. Where it says we became conscious of his presence. Before that, I got to do something else. And remember, I search diligently. How to find God, I search diligently. So I search diligently in that dark room, nobody, nothing in it. And what do I come up with? I know I'm not alone. There's a presence in here with me. And over time, I begin to feel that presence near. And over more time, I begin to sense the flow of that presence into me. And I eventually make conscious, sixth sense consciousness contact with my creator. So as we became conscious of his presence, as I began to lose my fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter, we were reborn. Not recreated, reborn, which is new. We're not resurrected, we are reborn. We're now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood him. Now, please highlight the rest of this 3rd step prayer. It goes all the way down to the 3rd to the last line where it says, may I do thy will always. Please highlight it all in pink. And we're going to read it first. I'll give you a second. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thy will. Relieve me, release me from the bondage of self. Bondage is slavery. Release me from the slavery of self. What a vision, what an image that is. Release me of the bondage of the slavery of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties. Please circle that word difficulties, because he's not referring to life's trials and tribulations. He's not talking about life's ups and downs. He's not talking about life's vicissitudes. He's not talking about any of those things. Life's certain trials and low spots. The difficulties that he's talking about are of our own making. Self will run riot. Self, 22 times in the previous page. Self, self, self. That's the difficulty that I need God to help me be victorious over. Take away, and incidentally, not help me. I should stand corrected, because it doesn't say help me. It says, and it doesn't say guide me. It says take away my difficulties. That God will take those away. Not that he'll help me, not that he'll guide me. He's going to take them away. That victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. My job now, after this, is not to take care of myself. It is to seek God, and God will take care of me. So, and then he says, I love this. He says it after the third step, after we take the step. We think well before taking this step, making sure we are ready for immediate use. We are ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly, absolutely, utterly, not partially, utterly. Utterly just means something that's complete, total, absolute, that we can absolutely abandon ourselves to that power. Let's go back to the beginning of that. I'm going to suggest, if you will, Andy, if you can give me 516, screen 516. I'm going to ask that you all stand up for a moment, and we're going to say this third step together. I'm going to open it up and unmute everyone. Let's read the third step together. God,
God,
Offer myself today. Fill with me and do with me as I will.
bondage of self,
Bondage of self,
Command
advantage of desire.
bring my difficulties,
And do thy will
your
always.
would help, power thy love, may I do thy will always.
I think I just heard God say, what an order. I can't go through. Congratulations, everybody. You've just taken the third step, and now we've got work to do. Let's go. We found it desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person. How about 130 understanding people? How's that? Did you not feel something there? Every time I do this and have 130 people saying those same words, it has an effect. I feel it. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, such as your wife, best friend, spiritual advisor, sponsor. But it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. You may want to highlight that. There's only one other place in the book where Bill advises caution like that. It has to do with the choosing of the person that we're going to do our inventory with, do our fifth step with, that we need somebody who has walked this same path before us, who knows what awaits us, who can guide us towards those things. Somebody who's not familiar with this process can only listen, or worse yet, minimize. Tell us, oh, you're being too harsh on yourself. Oh, no, you're not that bad. You didn't do that. Give yourself a break. Tatala. Don't be so hard on yourself. You don't need that. Don't need that. We need somebody who has walked this path before us, who's not going to try and convince us to do something else, who's going to extract the information from us that we need in the next step, and the next step, and the next step. So, better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. The wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning. That third step is only a beginning. We read about some stories back in War about alcoholism where somebody made the beginning. We told him what we knew about alcoholism and the solution, and he made a beginning. Good old Jim. But that's all we did, is make that beginning. That third step is but a beginning. And if we don't follow it up with action, we haven't done anything at all. Though, if honestly and humbly made an effect, sometimes a great one, please underline sometimes. And that last sentence, incidentally, should be in pink. That was only a beginning, though. If honestly and humbly have made an effect, effect means change in this case. One of the definitions of effect is change. And when I finally took this third step, after 24 years in recovery of putting it off and putting it off, there was this 800-pound gorilla in the room all the time. Every time I walked into a meeting of the steps and the fourth step, and I never did it and I never did it. And when I finally did it as part of the Big Book Step Study group I joined in May of 2006, I felt a change because I knew I was finally on the right path. So if you don't feel that, that's okay. It doesn't guarantee that you do. It says sometimes a great change is felt at last. Next, right away. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. That course of vigorous action is not the fourth step. The course of vigorous action is steps 4 through 9. That's the course of action. And I know that because he talks about the fourth step in a moment. He says the first step of which is a personal housekeeping. And incidentally, I passed over something I want to suggest, and I don't want to go over it without mentioning it. We just read Bill saying the wording of that third step was optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. What I always tell my people when we get to this point is here's an assignment. Write your own third step. Write your own, even if all you do is take out the these and the those and the thys and the all of that nonsense. Put it in language that you could understand, that you could relate to, but make sure it makes all of those points. So that's my suggestion for next week, if you like. Rewrite that third step, personalize it for you, but make sure it says exactly what it has to say, that taking away these difficulties that free me from the slavery of self and bearing witness to those I would help of thy power. So make sure it says those things. Otherwise, it's not the third step prayer. So we launch on a course of vigorous action, steps 4 through 9, the first of which is of personal housekeeping, step 4, which many of us had never attempted. Please highlight the rest of this paragraph. Though our decision, step 3, decision, was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect. Please underline permanent, because we are talking about permanent sobriety. It is possible. Permanent effect unless, circle and underline the words at once followed. That this decision was vital. What does vital mean? Vital, we already defined as life-giving, life-supporting. Crucial. Crucial is essential, life-supporting. So he's telling us this decision was a life-saving step. But it means nothing. It has little permanent effect unless at once followed by the strenuous effort, and please underline strenuous effort, to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us from God, incidentally. And please underline, our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. Had to is a must. Please underline causes and conditions. Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. Now I'm going to go through the next 2-3 paragraphs pretty quickly, and we're going to spend some more time on it next week because I want to get to the bottom of the page today. I have to get to that last part of page 64. And if I spend too much time explaining these next paragraphs, we'll never make it. So we'll do that next week. but we'll go through them. A business which takes no regular inventory, and you may want to highlight that whole paragraph. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. So in order for us to understand the personal inventory, Bill gives us, oh, sorry, not next week, the week after. Well, that's even better. So you have more time to work on the list. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding, fact-facing process. It's an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged, unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. We'll spend more time in that later. So, in an effort to understand what a personal inventory is, he draws a parallel to a business. Inventory means the same thing in both cases. If we look up inventory, the word that is defined as an itemized list. I don't know where we get the idea of writing out our life story in step 4. Doesn't say it anywhere in my book. It says it's an inventory, and an inventory is an itemized list. So I'm going to be making a list of truths about myself in the 4th step. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup. Please underline flaws, and above that, write defects, because we're going to use these words interchangeably. A lot of different words for defects, shortcomings, flaws, wrongs in our makeup, which caused our failure. Please highlight the rest of the paragraph, being convinced that self manifested in various ways. And what are those ways? You may want to write next to it, see page 62:1, because that's where it said those ways, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-pity, etc. We step on the toes of our fellows. So that's what he's talking about when he says, in various ways, was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. Resentment is the number one offender. Please highlight and underline those words. Resentment is the number one offender. Let's define the term. Resentment means to feel again. When you put RE before something, it means to do that thing again. The second part of the word, sentiment, comes from the Latin word sentire, which means to feel. So the word resentment means to re-feel. Most times you go to meetings, topic is resentment. What do people talk about? Anger. Anger is a resentment. So is fear. So is guilt and shame as a result of the harms we've done. These are all resentments. The 4th step is one giant resentment list. We have somehow interchanged the word anger with resentment, and that's okay as long as we can distinguish between the two. Resentment is what this is all about. And then we're going to break it down into its various forms, what it looks like. It looks like anger. It looks like fear, etc. We're going to re-feel these things. In order to identify them, we have to re-feel them. So resentment's the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else from its stem. Stem, once again, stem feeds the trees, feeds the plant. Its stem, all forms of spiritual disease. Please highlight the next sentence. For we have been not only mentally and physically ill. Mentally is the obsession. Physically is the allergy. We have been spiritually sick. There's our spiritual malady. All 3 components: spiritual, mental, and physical. Please highlight this next sentence in pink. When the spiritual malady is overcome, the spiritual malady is overcome in steps 1, 2, and 3. So above that, I wrote steps 1, 2, and 3. When the spiritual malady is overcome, in other words, when we take 1, 2, and 3, what happens? We straighten out mentally. Let's underline mentally, and above it, write steps 4 through 7. And then what? We straighten out physically, steps 8 and 9. It is in that order for a reason. We can't straighten out physically or mentally first. We have to straighten out spiritually. We have to get right on who's in charge here. When we sincerely took that position, all sorts of remarkable things happen. So I get right spiritually, then I get right mentally, then I get right physically. And P.S., when I start to unwind, I unwind physically first, then mentally, and then spiritually. You know how I know when I'm beginning to unwind? What's the first warning sign for me? I begin to have trouble with personal relationships. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Okay. So, in dealing with resentments, here's our assignment. We set them on paper. The first time, there's only 2 times in this book we're told to pick up a pen and paper, here and in the 8th step. So if your sponsor tells you write out the first step, go right ahead. But understand that's improvisation. That's not the AA program. It doesn't say to write out the first step or the second step or the third step. But it's okay. I don't want to come between anyone and their sponsor, but understand it's not the AA program. So we set them on paper. Please underline and highlight the assignment. We listed people, institutions, principles with whom we were angry. Then draw a line, please. Stop. Go no further. Andy, can I have 64-3? This is our assignment for not next week, the week after, and it's appropriate to have some time to really get into this. But all I'm asking to be done is make a list of names. The assignment says we listed. So we're listing it. We're not describing. We're not writing a story. We're listing something. What are we listing? We're listing people, institutions, principles. Now, I never met an alcoholic who didn't know exactly who he was angry at. That's an easy one. Okay? Institutions, I don't think that's that complicated either. Institutions, government, the correctional system, the mental health system, a political party, rehabs, I don't know, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service here in the States, religions, marriage, any institution that comes to mind. But principles requires a little bit more thought. Principles are things that we're told, these are guidelines that are forced on us, that we're told as we're growing up to follow, whether it's the 10 Commandments, whether it's religious dogma, whether it's concepts like hell and heaven and sin and adultery. How about old sayings? Things that are told, that are forced on us by our parents, that cause us conflict and confusion. Give you a couple of examples. My parents raised me to never strike another person in anger. You never put your hand on another person in anger. I believe in that. I raised my son that way. I'm very proud of the fact that he believes in that too. But when I was growing up, I was always the shortest kid in class. I was a chunky, chubby little kid. I had glasses and braces in the 2nd grade. I got picked on, and I never fought back. And while I felt I'm doing the right thing, that my parents want me to do that, I also felt like a coward. I felt conflicted because of that. So that caused me conflict, confusion, and anger. One of my guys put down, all men are created equal. He's black. And that wasn't his truth at all. And every time he heard it, he got angry because it wasn't his truth. So just think about the things you're told, like real men do this. Real men don't cry. One of the guys at the workshop told me that from the earliest recollection he had as a kid, every time he cried, he got the back of the hand from his father, as early as he could remember. And his father always said the following: real men don't cry. That's what we're talking about. The golden rule: do unto others. I was raised that way. You see, I thought it said, if I do unto you, you will do the same to me. That's not what it says. It says, do unto others as we would have them do unto us. So I was raised with a lot of expectations and disappointments with people because I treated you a certain way and I expected you to treat me the same, because that's what my parents said. It's not what they said, but that's what I heard. So think about those things, the things that were kind of crammed into our heads. One of the young ladies in the workshop put down, don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. She's an insomniac. She's like a compulsive, obsessive person. She can't go to sleep at night because all she could think of are the things that she didn't do in that day. See, my way of looking at it is I don't put off till tomorrow what I can put off till the day after. But that's my way of looking at things. So that's the request for the next time we get together. Just have a pad with you. Keep it in your pocket. Keep it in the car. Anytime something occurs to you, write it down. If you have to, make an appointment with yourself, 10, 15 minutes at a certain time every night, say 11 o'clock, TV off, computer off, wife off, husband off, kids off, everything off. I'm going to sit down with that piece of paper and write down some words. You'll get it done. Take a little bit of time, get a little bit of coaching, and it will be done in no time. And that's all you're being asked to do. Please don't overthink it. If something occurs to you, write it down. If you're thinking about Billy Kuttner, who kicked sand in your face when you were 3 years old in the sandbox, put it down. There's a reason why you're thinking that. God put it in your mind for a reason. Put it down. Because remember, we were told we want to get down to causes and conditions. So we want to know what made us angry. Why did we get angry when Billy Kuttner kicked sand in my face? We're going to look at that. Don't think, well, I'm not angry about that anymore. I've gotten past it, so I'm not going to put it down. Please put it down. Anything that makes or ever made you angry. And if you think you're not angry, try this one. How about irritated? Anything irritates you? Anybody ever irritates you? You can do a whole inventory on that by itself. But that's the point. If you think you're not angry, start with that. Just make a list of words, people, institutions, principles, and we're going to build on that. And I'm going to ask for, when you come back the next time, you also have a notebook, a spiral notebook with the spiral on the edge of it. Looks like that. We'll need that. Don't worry about why. Just pick it up. They cost maybe 50 cents at Staples. If you get it on a going back to school sale, it's even less. But just pick up a notebook. Don't do anything in it. Make this list on a separate piece of paper. And that's what we're going to do in 2 weeks. And I'm going to turn the recording off.